So yeah, again, thanks for being here. Thank you so much for supporting Clean Water Action. We work on a lot of different campaigns, pretty much all related to water, but a number of environmental issues and environmental justice, and supporting a lot of really important issues to our communities. And so, yeah, we wanted to put on these Water Action Wednesdays as a way to engage with our members and give them more information on some of the stuff that we're working on and how they can get involved. And yeah, just give updates on kind of some of the important environmental issues that are happening here in Minnesota. You can also visit our website, cleanwateraction.org, to see both our national organization as well as what the state itself is working on. And I would invite you all to join in on June 22nd for the Field to Fork Forum, as well as July 14th for the next Water Action Wednesday. Normally, we'll be hosting these every second Wednesday of the month. This one's on the first Wednesday because there's some time constraints when it comes to the Line 3 fight. And we wanted to make sure that folks are updated there. But we are going to be having them the second Wednesday of every month. And you can also visit our website to make sure you're registered for all of those. The next one will be hosted by Tom, an update on PFAS and the situation there. So that'll be really, really interesting as well. But yeah, like I said, this one will be on the fight against Line 3. You are more than welcome to drop any questions you have in the chat. We're going to have a brief presentation just kind of on some background information in the fight against Line 3, as well as the current situation and ways to get involved. And then we'll make space for questions at the end. But again, if you have questions while we're going, feel free to drop them in the chat, and we will do our best to address them. Yeah, without further ado, I think I'll go ahead and share my screen. Let's see. Can folks see that all right? Awesome. I'm gonna go ahead and present. So yeah, like I said, we'll be talking about the movement to stop Line 3 today. So just for a bit of background, what is Line 3? Line 3 is a tar sands oil pipeline that is currently being constructed across northern Minnesota. It's known as kind of the Line 3 replacement project, although in reality, it's an expansion project. It was originally built in 1968 and operated for, I think, around 50 years or so, and carried tar sands oil from Alberta, Canada, down through northern Minnesota and into Superior, Wisconsin, where it gets exported to the world economy. The original Line 3 is responsible for the largest inland oil spill in the United States. So it's a really big environmental justice issue, an environmental issue in general, a huge threat to our water, our climate, and so many other things. And again, it's called a replacement project, but in reality, it's an expansion project. They're doubling the capacity, doubling the size compared to the previous Line 3. And so it's going to be transporting even more tar sands oil, which is the dirtiest, like one of the dirtiest energy sources in the world, and is really destructive to the environment. And again, like if it spills, which pipelines all spill, it will have huge impacts on our water, our land here in Minnesota, and so much more. So the image to the right shows just a bit of a map on what the project looks like. So the gray line is the original, and then the red line is the expansion project. So it shows that they're going through a completely different area. They're leaving like a huge part of the pipeline in the ground. So it's not even that they're replacing it. They're leaving it and just building a new one that's bigger and has more capacity. And again, it passes through so much area here in Minnesota. It passes through, indigenous territory and treaty land, which, gets us to some of the problems. We've already mentioned some of them, but Line 3 does violate treaty rights of the Anishinaabe people. These treaties that were signed, make sure that the Anishinaabe people have the right to, use that land for their own survival and for, culturally important like rituals and just parts of their culture that are really significant to them. And this is a direct threat to their wild rice, which is culturally significant. A spill would have huge impacts on just the environment in general in their territory. And so, it's a really big indigenous rights issue. And on top of that, while like pipelines are being constructed, there's these things called man camps where, the pipeline workers all gather in areas and basically just camp out while they are working on the pipeline. And in these areas, drug trafficking and sex trafficking is hugely increased while the workers are staying there. And this disproportionately impacts Indigenous women, Two-Spirit people, and children. So, we've already seen a few people that have gone missing. And, the issue of missing and murdered Indigenous relatives is a huge issue because the federal government largely refuses to investigate it. So I think over 2,000 people have gone missing and have been murdered in the past 50 years or so. So again, these pipelines are a huge issue for our Indigenous relatives. These communities are really impacted in that way. On top of that, there's the climate change aspect. So Line 3, the estimates show that if it's built for, or if it operates for around 30 years, it'll move enough oil to basically be the equivalent of creating 50 new coal-fired plants, which is a huge carbon source, or just greenhouse gas source in general. Again, tar sands are one of the dirtiest fossil fuels out there, and Line 3 will be moving tar sands oil for potentially upward of 50 years if it's allowed to run its full course, and we simply do not have that time. We have to be dealing with climate change 20 years ago, if not earlier. And, we are way behind schedule and we're still trying to build new pipelines. So yeah, the social cost for that has been estimated to be around 287 billion just in the first 30 years. And again, the original Line 3 ran for around 50. So if we see that again, it would be even higher than that. On top of that, one of the arguments that people often put forward in favor of Line 3 is, economic need. And that's actually an interesting point because the Minnesota Department of Commerce is actually in court against the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. So we have one state agency that is suing another because Enbridge never provided a demand forecast, which they legally have to do. And so, the Department of Commerce is joining a number of other groups to sue the Public Utilities Commission because they originally unanimously and then on a vote of 4-1 approved the route permit, the environmental impact statement, and the certificate of need for this pipeline, despite there not being the need for it. Again, the world is transitioning away from fossil fuels. Tar sands is, again, one of the dirtiest fuel sources, and we really don't need to be creating this new infrastructure to move it. And again, it's a huge threat to our water and our land. All pipelines spill. There's that was even admitted in the environmental impact statement that a spill would eventually happen, and they just argued that it wouldn't be that impactful. But again, Enbridge is responsible for a huge number of spills, including the largest inland oil spill. And so if we allow this pipeline to continue and to be completed and to transport oil, it's going to spill at some point, and it's going to impact our water. It's going to impact our land. It's going to have so many impacts on the local environment and those communities as well. So there's lots of different problems with Line 3, and that's why we've been fighting it for so many years. And Clean Water Action has largely played a supporting role in this fight, but it's a fight that has shown Indigenous groups working hand in hand with NGOs and communities and people all across Minnesota and all across the country to try and get this pipeline stopped. Yeah, so in terms of movement background, there's kind of been three main facets of the movement that have been working, against Line 3 for the past couple of years. I believe 2014 was when it was originally proposed. So the movement has been going for around 7 years now, and has delayed this project for a number of years, which has been really, really important. But yeah, so the first aspect of it that has been really key is permitting. So again, this is a project that requires a lot of different permits. There's permits like the certificate of need, the route permit, and the environmental impact statement, like I mentioned before. There's also water crossing permits that the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency provided. There's federal permits that are needed, a number of different permits. And pretty much in all of these, the movement has been there making public comments, showing that Minnesotans do not want this pipeline through our land. And yeah, putting pressure on our elected officials and on our state agencies to deny the permits. And for a number of years, this has delayed the process immensely. I think one of the biggest examples of this show of support against Line 3 is with the original public comment period for the PUCs, or the Public Utilities Commission's permitting process, where like 68,000 Minnesotans like put in comments with, I think, like 96% of them being against Line 3. And yet we still saw the Public Utilities Commission unanimously approve the pipeline, or at least approve the permits that were in front of them at that time. So there has been, oh yes.
Mm-hmm. There's a question that actually is pretty on topic for what you're talking about. Lorraine asks, if there's no economic need and it violates a treaty, what is the argument for Line 3 to be supported? It seems to have a lot of negative consequences.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the main arguments in favor of it are just that our world, our economy still relies heavily on fossil fuels, and transporting them by pipeline is like safer than by rail, which is first off arguable, and second off, again, pipelines make it so that the infrastructure is there for so much longer. It like commits us to another 30 plus years of tar sands oil. But yeah, the argument there is just that like, our world still needs it, and like especially like more developing countries. And then another argument is just that it provides a lot of jobs. So this is especially prevalent during like the economic crisis of the last year. That was one of the reasons why like Enbridge, the company building Line 3, was really able to like utilize that argument to say like we are providing thousands of jobs for workers. But even then, they promised like half of those jobs to be for Minnesotans, and the records show that around only like a quarter of them have been for Minnesotans. So during a pandemic, they brought in 75% of the workers from out of state traveling around, a lot of them not wearing like masks and things like that. But yeah, those are kind of some of the main arguments, if that kind of answers that question. But yeah, so again, when it comes to the permits, there have been actions at the governor's mansion as well, at the Public Utilities Commission, at the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, all sorts of things to try and get our state agencies to really represent Minnesotans. Because again, based on like the public comments we've seen, the testimonies we've seen, Minnesotans largely don't want this project. And that is even, acknowledging the fact that like Enbridge has spent like millions of dollars on lobbying, on like commercials, and basically like propaganda. I think they're one of like the largest, if not the largest, spender on commercials in Minnesota, because they want so hard to like make it seem like Minnesotans want this. And even despite that, there is still a very clear imbalance in how many Minnesotans want this project versus don't want it. And unfortunately, like after again, like 6 or so years of resistance to the permits, the final ones were granted kind of at the end of November last year, and construction was able to begin just like at the start of December. But again, like this pushed back the project so many years because there was a huge amount of grassroots work and engagement with the process, and a huge amount of people power that again showed that Minnesotans don't want this project. So it is disappointing that our state agencies still approved it in the end, but we were able to delay the project by a number of years because of this work. And that kind of gets us to the second part of this movement, which is the courts. So I think I mentioned this before, but there are currently 3 legal appeals against Line 3, one of which is against the Public Utilities Commission for their permitting of the environmental impact statement, the route permit, and the certificate of need. With the main focus there being, again, on the certificate of need, arguing that Enbridge did not provide a demand forecast, so they legally should not be able to be building this pipeline. The second of the appeals is against the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and oral arguments for that will be heard in just a week or so. And that is arguing that the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency should not have granted the water crossing permits. And then the third is against the federal permits, and that is coming up later this year. But the main focus is definitely on that first permit, or that first appeal. We will be getting a decision by June 21st, so it's coming right up. And there's a lot of hopes that we'll see like a big decision come out of this. There was a really positive reception to the oral arguments for this appeal a couple of months ago, where the judge was asking a lot of like clarifying questions of our side, and then a lot of hard pressing questions of Enbridge and the PUC. So there is a lot of potential that Enbridge just loses their certificate of need, which puts into question the entire project. Because again, like if there's no need for it, why are they building it? Especially with all the risks that come both from COVID and from like oil spills and just the general construction implications. And yeah, so some of the parties involved in that appeal are like Red Lake and White Earth Nations. So again, like one of the major like arguments from like Enbridge and proponents of Line 3 is that like, you know, indigenous like communities are okay with this, but clearly they aren't, because two enormous indigenous like nations are in court against Enbridge and against the PUC for allowing this project. We also see the Youth Climate Interveners, which is a group of youth who are arguing that they will be disproportionately impacted by the climate impacts of Line 3. They're also a legal party that represents themselves, and is, I think, the first time that that has happened in this kind of process, at least in Minnesota. And then various NGOs are also involved in the appeals process there. Yeah, so there's ongoing appeals there, and we might get a decision that sends Enbridge back to like the state agencies, in which case we'll again start up the work of delaying the permits, arguing that this is not needed, that this shouldn't be allowed, and that'll again delay the project even further. And the more it delays, the more difficult it becomes for Enbridge to justify it to their investors, to like their shareholders, that this is a project that is worth pursuing. Because again, we've delayed it for so many years now, and the tar sands industry is really, really suffering at this point because the world recognizes that we need to move away from fossil fuels. So this is again a really important legal appeal, and the more that we can get, the more wins that we can get in the courts, the better our chances are of delaying this project or stopping it completely. But yeah, and then the third kind of aspect of the movement that I want to touch on is NVDA, which stands for Nonviolent Direct Action. This has been Indigenous-led frontline resistance. There are a number of camps up north where Indigenous leaders like help train people who are willing to put their bodies and their freedom on the line to prevent this project. And there's been a huge number of actions that have happened in the past the past half year since construction began, where people have gone up north and like tied themselves down to equipment, put up tripods in front of equipment, done blockades, all sorts of actions that have been really powerful. And while construction is like still been able to largely go on, it still shows like how important this issue is to people, that they're willing to get arrested. I think at this point over 200 people have been arrested or cited so far up north. And it also relates back to like an issue that's been really prominent here in the Twin Cities around like policing. Like Enbridge has paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to like local police forces up in northern Minnesota to ensure that they get the security they need. And it's just kind of continued oppression of a foreign corporation paying off police to arrest Minnesotans that are like trying to fight a pipeline in their own state. So this is a huge issue, and the NVDA has been a really important aspect of it. That has been really powerful collaboration between Indigenous-led organizations and non-Indigenous allies. But yeah, that gets us to the current situation. So right now, construction is around 50% done, slightly more. Enbridge is just coming off of a 2-month hiatus, and they are they were basically forced to go on hiatus because of the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency's laws around like construction equipment and like the weight of vehicles that are allowed during like the wet season up there. So that has been able to or that has given us a bit more time, especially with the legal appeals. But again, this is a project that was allowed to start construction while there were legal appeals pending. Like these appeals have been going since October and November of last year. And yet the permits were allowed, and construction is again like almost or over halfway done at this point. As I mentioned, yeah, there's ongoing legal decisions or legal appeals. We're expecting to get a decision in the coming weeks. The decision always comes on a Monday, but the lawyers are informed the Wednesday beforehand. And we did not hear anything this Wednesday, which only leaves two Mondays left, in which we'll get a decision. And so we are really hoping that we will see that sooner rather than later, and that it'll be a really big decision. And yeah, there's been, again, like ongoing action camps and frontline resistance from different Indigenous-led organizations like GNU Collective. They're a huge one. Rise Coalition Camp McGeezy, just to name a few. And again, there's so many different organizations and groups that are Indigenous led, Indigenous women leading them, to show that like this is not something they want. This is a huge Indigenous justice issue. And so yeah, the current situation is a lot of resistance, a lot of things that are kind of hanging in the balance, and we might see it tip one way or the other, depending on some of these court decisions. And that gets us kind of to the take action part of this. So again, with these Water Action Wednesdays, we want to leave people with ways they can plug in to the movement or whatever issues that we're talking about. And there's definitely lots of ways that people can plug into the fight against Line 3 right now, especially. So just this weekend, there will be a mass mobilization to stop Line 3 called the Treaty People Rising, or the Treaty People Gathering. And the website is being linked in chat. So you can register on there if you're interested. It's going to be a huge gathering of people from all across the country. There's people coming from like so many different states, even, taking buses or vans from like California or like New York to come and protest Line 3. So this is going to be a really big event. I think over 1,500 people are registered already. There's going to be, really powerful action. It's going to be, opportunities to learn about treaties and how to be a treaty person. One of the really important aspects of this that we're trying to emphasize is that we are all treaty people. It's not just Indigenous people who are beholden to treaties. It's all of us, because the United States as a country signed these treaties with these Indigenous groups, and so we as citizens have a right, or have a duty to uphold it. So again, it's happening this Saturday through Tuesday. It's going to be a huge opportunity to go up north and get involved directly, including some nonviolent direct action. There will be trainings on that happening on Sunday. There will be really robust legal support and jail support for those who do get involved with that. We want to make sure that people are supported and not just left to the wayside with this. And there's going to be lots of different ways for people to plug in there. I think the logistics guide as well has a lot more information on what'll be happening, how to prepare, and why it's important. And so I would definitely recommend checking that out. And for those who aren't able to go, definitely understand it's only a few days away for one, and also we're just coming off of a huge pandemic that is still really prominent. Not everyone is vaccinated. We want to keep people safe. So if you're not able to make it for those reasons or any other personal reasons, there's definitely lots of other ways to get involved. For example, the Stop Line 3 dashboard has a ton of information, including ongoing updates around the situation and some very easy ways to plug in. And so, one of the big ways that we've been working kind of more remotely and nationally is pressuring our elected officials, both kind of here in Minnesota and on a national level. We've tried really hard with Governor Walz, but he's kind of clearly made his decision on Line 3. And, because of his decision, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency was able to, approve the permits. And that's why construction is happening right now. But there is definitely like other opportunities there, such as our congressional representatives. Two of them, Betty McCollum and Ilhan Omar, both signed a letter to President Biden asking that he revoke the permits for Line 3 federally and stop this pipeline, similarly to what we saw with Keystone XL right at the beginning of the Biden administration. And we're also just trying to put pressure directly on President Biden, because again, he can revoke these permits. He can put them, he can like halt construction and like have a more thorough environmental impact statement done by like the Army Corps of Engineers. There's so many things that can be done at the federal level. We just have to show that this is an important issue to Minnesotans. It's an important issue to people all across the country, and it's something that needs to be addressed with urgency because again, construction is happening. Enbridge is expecting to be completed by complete construction by like October or so, and have oil running through it by the end of the year. So we are really in crunch time with this movement. There's also ways to get involved with social media, just posting about it, tweeting at elected officials, tweeting at President Biden. There's also like guides on like TikTok and, just increasing the presence of the movement to stop Line 3 on social media because of how much, has become digital in the last year and how much like the newer generation is more attracted to those kinds of things. So having the online presence is really important. There's ways to directly support the front lines, both with, supply drives as well as ways to donate. again, a lot of these resistance camps are indigenous led, and they definitely need financial support to do different things. A lot of people have been arrested, and that requires financial support as well. There's different supplies that are needed, and all of that is can be found on the dashboard as well. Another really impactful thing is just writing letters to the editor. So again, Enbridge has spent a lot of money to create more, to have more of an influence on Minnesotans' opinions around Line 3. And so one of the ways we can counteract that without spending millions of dollars is by increasing our presence in news outlets and, again, making it clear that Minnesotans don't want this. So there is a guide on how to write letters to the editor. There's always a need for that. It increases our presence. It shows that Minnesotans don't want this, and it kind of works to counteract some of that propaganda that Enbridge has been utilizing for years. And there's more things as well on that dashboard. I just wanted to highlight a few of them. But yeah, that concludes the presentation part of this. I hope that was a good overview of the situation, both the history of the fight against Line 3 as well as the current situation. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. And yeah, we will open it up for any questions that folks might have. You can also talk more about the upcoming Treaty People Gathering or other ways that people want to get involved. And yeah, if there's not any questions, we can also cut it short. But yeah, thank you again for being here. Thanks for watching. And yeah, any questions? And I'll also open up to my coworkers as well if any of them want to ask any questions.
Sasha, do you know, I forget the numbers, but I always was kind of under the impression that there were maybe perhaps going to be a big glut of jobs at, construction jobs, obviously, with the pipeline, but do you know what the permanent amount of jobs would actually be for the pipeline? My understanding is it's not very many.
Yeah, I mean, the vast majority is definitely just construction jobs. I think there'll be some pumping stations and things like that that'll be along the route that'll probably need to be manned, but that is very few jobs in general that are long term. And construction workers know that these kinds of jobs are temporary. It's mostly just the economic situation has been pretty dire this past year, which is understandable. But again, we can there's so much more potential for creating a just transition and creating a better structure that's sustainable and climate friendly that those kinds of workers can put their energy towards, that is a lot more sustainable because that's the direction that we need to be moving. So it yeah, these are definitely more temporary jobs that will provide for them for a year or so. But we should definitely be thinking about ways that we can provide more long-term jobs for them in sustainable development.
And Sasha, can you repeat the website that people can go to find out more information, because they won't be able to see the chat on the recording? It'd be great to share that website.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the movement in general, stopline3.org has a ton of information on the issues and ways to get involved. It's constantly being updated. And then for this upcoming mass mobilization, you can go to treatypeoplegathering.com for more information on what that'll look like as well.
Thanks.
Any other questions folks might have? All right. Well, yeah, thank you so much again for being here. Again, this is the first ever Water Action Wednesday. We want to continue having folks just more plugged into the work that we're doing with clear ways that they can get involved. So again, we have our next one, July 14th. That'll be an update on the PFAS situation, and definitely a lot of work that needs to be done around that. So we hope that you'll tune in there. And Tom is also plugging our social media in the chat. That's definitely a good way of also staying updated on what we are doing and the campaigns that we're working on. So make sure to follow us there. And yeah, I think we will go ahead and close it out.